Hey, my peepsy cheapsies, how we doing? It has been a while. Oh yeah, it has been a while. I think 2 years, no, maybe even 2 or 3 years since I've been live on this thing. So let's see what happens. It is approximately 10 p.m. in America. So let's have a look. And I actually wanted to talk to you about something interesting today because I noticed something just really strange, and more people are talking about this now. Okay, Jason, good to see you. This is the discrepancy in datings. Pre-dynastic Egyptian artwork matches Göbekli Tepe artwork matches Easter Island artwork. One is 4,000, 5,000 BC, one is 10,000 BC, and one is 1,000 or 1,500 AD. In other words, the Egyptian academic journals one cannot publish that one has found a date of 10,000 BC at Giza because it will not be published. Yet the same artworks are found at Göbekli Tepe, and it can be published that it's 10,000 BC. So is Giza pre-dynastic actually 10,000 BC? And a video about this will be coming up. So I really wanted to make that point that the datings are all mixed up. How can you have the same artworks for literally thousands of years? The only place where this has been the case has been Egypt, I suppose. But if there was such a break in Egyptian civilization, as they say, and hardly anything going on in Egypt in 10,000 BC as they claim, why would there be the same artworks popping up thousands of years later? That doesn't make any sense. G'day everyone, how you doing? Hope you're doing good. Yes, I thought I'll just do a live video because I haven't done this for 3 years. So I thought I'll just have a chat to you guys. Yeah. So Jason says, how do you think they traveled the far distances? I'll tell you. So I'll show you. I'll just this is how. Let me see. I can't find it. It's gone somewhere. I was reading a book called by Heyerdahl, Tor Heyerdahl, Early Man in the Ocean, and he says the biggest rivers in the world are actually the ocean currents. You just need to put your boat on it, and you'll end up on another continent because the wind and the water underneath will just pull you along to where you want to go, and that's it. It's simple as that. And he says that the 20th century perception of needing petrol, needing fuel, needing coal to get from A to B has ruined our understanding of how easy it is to hop on an ocean current and travel the world. Yeah. Oh, g'day, Nancy Volk. Yeah, wahoo. How you doing? Yes. Yes. I hope you're all doing good. I was just chatting about Göbekli Tepe just now, and saying the point I was trying to make was, in Egypt, if they would find pre-dynastic artworks which match the artworks at Göbekli Tepe, you would not be able to date them to 10,000 BC and get that work published. You would have to date it to 3,500 BC. If you find the same artwork on Easter Island, you would have to date it to 1,500 AD, or you can't publish it in that journal. So what I'm trying to say is the fact that Göbekli Tepe is showing that this artwork is from 10,000 BC, possibly redates Proto-Giza to basically 10,000 BC as well, does it not? So a video about that will be coming up. And another one on Ea is Ea Enki in the Sumerian world. So we're going to talk about that as well. Just amazing. Anyway, yeah. So let's see let's see what's happening here. So, hey Charles, Nuno, yes. I'd love to see a map simply marking and listing all the ancient currents and modern currents. Tor was amazing. Yeah, he was, and what he revealed in his book, Early Man in the Ocean, I don't know where the hell it's got to. I was trying to fish around for it just now because I'm halfway through it. He was saying that actually, if there was old world travel between the old and new world, this would show up in vegetation. And the claim is we don't see that in vegetation, but he's identified many instances where that is indeed the case. For example, American cotton was found growing on Easter Island, which actually means that there was they attempted to take the textile industry from South America or Central America to Easter Island when they moved over, whenever that was, maybe 2,000 years ago, so, or maybe earlier. And what actually has happened is a lot of microclimate environments have selected against the importation of foreign Just because you import a foreign vegetable to another country doesn't mean it's going to take over. That could just die out straight away. So we would never know today if there was any travel based on that evidence alone. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Nancy. I think it's a crime that GT is being messed up with all that lovely construction. Indeed, Gobeckli Tepe. Jimmy was talking about that, wasn't he, on X? And they were saying that they want to shut him down. They want to ban him from Gobeckli Tepe. Because he was, I guess, making them look bad in the eyes of the public. Yeah, Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh. Well, it's an interesting thing with Ea, because with Ea, which Abraham took to Egypt, which became Ea, the moon god. Ea was the water god, hence the rainbow in the sky is God's watery promise that he's not going to stuff things up again. And this derives, of course, from Min. And here's another piece of evidence to possibly redate the Egyptian pre-dynastic to 10,000 BC. Min, as we know it, at Karahan Tep, basically the pea god, because he's holding his pea, is actually a water god for that reason, right? And he is in Egypt. This same god is in pre-dynastic Egypt while they're making pre-dynastic artworks in Egypt, which look like Göbekli Tepe, and there's supposedly a 6,000-year difference between them. So they got the same god. He was a supreme god in the Egyptian pre-dynastic, the same artworks, similar artworks, not the same. And there's a 6,000-year difference between what's happening in Turkey and what's happening in Egypt. Now, there's something in my head that's saying that doesn't make sense. So we might have to redate everything. So, yeah, why not? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, Fox Hunt says the Tata, aka the last civilization architecture, is everywhere and it's real. We can't do it now. Yeah, I know people are certainly talking about that. I've never really been a fan of that, I've got to say. It's simply because that's the name of the East Chinese. So it doesn't match with what other people are saying about it. But anyway, GT is Göbekli Tepe. Fox Hunt, g'day, says going with nature is the new counterculture, basically. It is, isn't it? It is, isn't it? I've been reading that Gen X is switching to butter because all the boomers have the margarine. So the Gen X is going to butter and steaks and all this. This is the new thing, to be carnivore and all that, isn't it? Yeah. Charles, do you believe humans and dinosaurs coexist? Well, it would seem so. And it would seem... So I've come up with this idea of, human tunnel vision. Human tunnel vision skews our understanding of every single concept there ever was. So because of human tunnel vision, because of the mass extinction 65 million years ago, all dinosaurs must have gone extinct in that time. And if you're going to show that there are dinosaur bones from after that time, again, that's not going to be published. And because it's not going to be published, it's the dogma is reinforced by the fact that people won't let it be published because of the dogma. So because of this dogma, we have an understanding where humans knew about dinosaurs. It's in all our ancient mythology. Humans were killing dinosaurs because they got in the way. They were our competitors. But we're not allowed to say they were dinosaurs because that's mythology and it's not anthropology, right? So Ben says, we can do the buildings of Tartaria just as child labour and no safety laws. It's a good point, actually. Hey, guys, do you know, fun fact, apparently people were working maybe the hardest they've ever worked in the late 19th century. Maybe, because when they dug up the Victorian bones and bodies, they found that these people were stronger than us, healthier than us, and they actually worked harder than us. They were walking everywhere. They had to carry everything everywhere. No one had a car. No one had a carriage. Was expensive. They could rent a carriage. It was expensive. And they were working super hard to build all those grand buildings, which 1 or 2 generations later, they said, this is out of style. By the 1930s, this is out of style. The ceilings are too high. We can't get enough rent for this. Let's knock it. And they started knocking them all down in the 30s. I can't believe it. Just 40 years later. Yep. Fox Hunt's Gen X. Yes. If I was 1 year old, I'd be Gen X too. Anyway. Yes. Really nice. Really nice. Yeah, it's good to see all you people. Yeah. Very nice, very nice. Oh, hey, Great Monkey King, how you doing? Hey, you disappeared a bit there after I didn't want to read a certain thing or something. Um, yeah. So yeah, and Fox Hunt says with chisels and donkeys, it's worth some deep dives. Yes, indeed, it is. Uh, yes, indeed, it is. That's right. Yeah, yeah. So what I was talking about earlier was the discrepancy in dating between Göbekli, Egypt, Easter Island, and people are pointing out on X that all the artworks look the same, like they were done by the same worldwide civilization. So why are they being dated differently? And they're being dated differently due to the pre-existing dogma of when they are allowed to be dated. Another example, recently there was some hominid. Um, it was either in Europe or in America, and in the 60s it was published as being something like 7,000 years old. But they've carbon dated it again, and it dates to more like 20 or 30,000 years old. So they actually changed what the result was in order to make a publication, because the dogma said you're not allowed to say this. And because of this dogma that's actually taken over all of ancient history and archaeology, everything becomes wrong because of the dogma. Isn't that interesting? And so a lot of what we're doing on the channel, I've always been trying to say, okay, let's get rid of the dogma. Let's forget about the dogma. Let's forget what Wikipedia says, and let's have a look at ourselves and start to think about why the brain is outputting the data that this doesn't make sense in relation to this that's just been dug up in the 90s. In the 90s, it was allowed to be said, oh, this is 10,000 years old, because people were no longer going to church and saying that the earth is 6,000 years old. But when they were doing all the Egyptian archaeology, they were still going to church every Sunday, and they didn't want to say necessarily that the earth was that old, because then this would stuff up all the genealogies in the Bible, right? That's why. Yep. Yeah. So, hey, also on that dinosaurs topic, I've noticed there's a big channel now. He's got maybe 30,000 subscribers or more, and he's saying that he's making videos every day, and he's saying that dinosaurs are recent, and he keeps putting out evidence after evidence after evidence that dinosaurs are recent. And if you're an anthropologist, you can't say this. But if you're an amateur investigator, you can say whatever you want. You can find the evidence, and you can actually, because you're free of all the dogma, right? Right? Yeah. So, what are people saying? So, Fox Hunt says microwaves, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi, all on 2.5 gigahertz. Huh. Yes, indeed. Charles is organic material RC. What's RCD? Radiocarbon date found in stone accurate. It might be. Yeah, it might be, because I think so I think it's expensive to do radiocarbon dating, and because it's expensive, they haven't done it that much. And if you haven't done it that much, you don't exactly know how it works. So when they were dating the recent dinosaur bones, and they've still got flesh and feathers on them, even though they're supposedly millions of years old, and they were dating it, even though it's supposed to have turned to stone, and they're dating it with the carbon machine, and they say, oh, it's 30,000 years old, which is exactly when the Carolina Bays were 30,000 years ago, when that occurred. Oh, the coincidences start lining up. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that would explain why we know about dragons. Oh, okay. Oh, the evidence is falling into place. Wow. Oh, what a coincidence. Let's forget about it. Right? Anyway, Fox Hunt says my credentials are that I don't have any credentials. So I think I made a post or something the other day. I said, was Einstein an expert when he discovered relativity? It's only the amateurs that discover the science, not the corporations or the governments. It's just one person or two people that make a discovery. That's it, and they are the science, and no one, and everything else up to that point is just a dogma. Yeah. So Venus says you can buy dinosaur poop online. Oh, it's very interesting. Fox Hunt made a joke. Carbon dating is passe. Oh, I mean, yeah. So Venus says you have a friend who has a big collection of dinosaur poop. Wow. Hey, I remember we found one once back in the 90s. It was like a excursion or something, and we went to a beach where fossils are found. And we basically, this is the spam call. I'm just gonna ignore that. I'm just gonna bye bye. So so basically, it was a fossil beach, and what it was just covered in mud. So it's like a mudslide had happened, and it covered everything. And there was an anthropologist there, and we were digging up stuff, and we found microfossils that we had to wash them, and Mum was helping me wash them and filter them and look at them through the microscope at school. And the anthropologist there, she just pulled out a rock. She said, "Oh, that's some dinosaur poo," or something like that. And yeah, and I thought, really? So all we had to do was dig down about 20 or 30 centimeters into only mud, and that's some dinosaur stuff. That's interesting. And at the time, I thought this doesn't make any sense. I thought to go back 65 million years ago, you'd have to go through 3 meters of solid rock, but that is not necessarily the case. So I thought that's weird. Yeah, what do you think of that? Anyway, so oh, hello, Andrew McKenzie says, the farmers that own the land didn't want the government to take the land. There's a law in Turkey that you can't cut down olive trees. Yeah, they're definitely not doing it to sell the olives. Yeah, that's a funny one, isn't it? The olive trees on top of Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so so Ben says roll it into 7 balls. Yeah. Yeah, Charles Base. Thank you, sir. Yes, yeah. What are her comments here? So Fox Hunt says, and their prints, no brush strokes on the Renaissance. Hey, that's another thing, isn't it? There's some videos out there saying, why are there no brush strokes on Renaissance artworks? Well, there's something interesting. Vermeer, Girl with the Pearl. And people who really investigate his paintings are absolutely convinced, and he was very secretive about how he did his paintings. They're absolutely convinced he used a camera. They call it a camera obscura. And it creates an image on the wall. And if there was knowledge of camera obscura, it might explain the Shroud of Turin also. Although the Shroud of Turin is a very strange artifact. I call it a quantum mechanical artifact because there is evidence. Whatever you want to believe about it, you will find evidence for it, which I find strange. So you have very qualified researchers saying it's supernatural, very qualified researchers saying it's a painting, it's a photo. And they both provide strong evidence about this. Maybe it was touched up photographically and then in terms of a painting, who knows? Yeah. Fun stuff, eh? What else? Charles, I think the granite boxes of Saqqara are smooth inside for the purpose of food storage. Oh, those huge boxes, I remember those. There's a huge black alchemical kind of boxes, and they're totally smooth. And they said, oh, this is an alchemical treatment on the stone to create a gloss finish. And yeah, food storage. Yeah, look, of course, it's a basement, isn't it? It's a barrow. A barrow. I'd say the barrow is the same word as pyramid. So these are for, and that's why they thought they were for storing. Yeah, I think you're right. Fox Hunt says we're missing some tech. Fox Hunt, I totally agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And you also have typed part of the 54 miles of texts we peasants can't access at the Vatican. Hey, by the way, has anyone ever seen a photo? I'd like to see a photo of this Vatican archive, actually. One thing about the Vatican, it's actually in... the Vatican is part of ancient Rome, which was a burial ground. And so the Romans didn't build too many buildings there. And this burial ground went back even before the Romans because there were pyramids found there, those so-called Roman pyramids. And there were more of them there. You can see this on the old Italian maps. They were actually, and these surrounded Rome. They were all outside the city, and they were in the burial ground as well. And this Vatican was a burial ground, and there were alignments. And the Vatican is currently built along one of these alignments pointing to I think Hadrian's tomb, which is a kind of weird circular pyramid. Was it a type of Buddhist stupa in the past? I think I've suggested this. Very interesting. Interesting. What we're talking about? Yeah, has anyone got a photo of the Vatican archive? I want to see. I don't even know. Not even sure it even exists. But if it does, there's ancient tombs down there. There's so much ancient digging down there. They could fill massive catacombs full of books. Who really knows? It's in the right place. Yeah, yeah. I'd love to see a picture if one even exists. Hard to believe no one's taken a photo. I want to see a photo. Yeah. I'm looking back a bit. Charles Nuno wrote, affirmative Shakespeare. The discovery of date palms in Peru is a great one that makes me pause. Yeah, earlier I was saying that just because we don't find vegetation swapped around in different countries from an early date doesn't mean there wasn't any travel, because that vegetation may not have taken hold in a different climate it's not used to. And Heyerdahl has actually disproven claims in his Early Man in the Ocean that there was no ancient spread of vegetation. He said, well, look, there was clearly ancient spread of vegetation from South America to Easter Island. And he's found many more instances of the Old World spread of vegetation. And these are simply just not acknowledged because the dogma is reinforcing the idea that this couldn't have happened. So people don't bother to look, or if they do look, they're not going to write about it. Right? Troy says, looking well, good to have you back. Yeah, I haven't done this for like 3 years. Isn't that funny? Yeah. I've lost a bit of weight recently, so I thought, oh yeah, I've got a lot more to lose. But I thought, oh yeah, I'm looking a bit better. May as well do a live video. Just stop the bread, pasta, dairy, get rid of that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah, I'll do some more lives. It's quite fun. Quite fun indeed, sir. Quite fun indeed. Yes. So, what else is happening? So, Foxhunt says this Vatican archive is considered a private collection of the Pope. That might be why there's no photos of it, I suppose. Yeah, quite interesting. Quite interesting. Yeah. Most fascinating. Another thing about the Vatican, because it's built on a Roman wasteland it was a cemetery, and it was kind of outside the. I think it was just outside the Roman city walls. It sort of implies that the population had grown or something, or they were setting up just a brand new infrastructure there back in slightly pre-Christian times to build a whole new priestly complex. The Vatican history is really interesting and not much explored, like why and how, and anyway, and how the Roman Empire was replaced by the Vatican. Because in the Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, every European king had to do exactly what the Pope said, or it was the ultimate excuse for all of his nobles to depose him and elect a new king. But by several centuries later, the Pope no longer had any of that power. Anyway. Yeah. So Matthew says the male seeds of date palm trees look a little like pine cones. That's an interesting observation. Yeah. Yeah, lots of foods look like other foods, and one looks at them and one wonders, oh, hang on a sec, that looks like that. And how did that happen? Hey, an interesting thing the other day, my bro and mum said, why are crocodiles green? And I thought to myself, hang on a sec. Oh, thank you, Monica. Thank you very much indeed. I love it. Yeah. I've been tanning. And this is not the best. This webcam terrible. But anyway, why are crocodiles green? And I thought, oh, is this a relic of plant DNA? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Plants with a huge gaping mouth, a Venus flytrap, an animal that doesn't move much. A crocodile sort of stays still like a plant for extended periods of time, doesn't eat for weeks sometimes like a plant, keeps waiting, and then chomp with its huge mouth. So much plant DNA in there. Early evolution. No one's never told me that. But and why would it be green? Well, it's the color of a swamp, but it's also the color of a plant. It was the color of everything else. It's one of the oldest animals. No one ever told me that. And I just thought, oh, well, some ideas. Yeah. Oh, we're talking about lots of things. What are people saying? So, so I've recorded 2 videos I haven't released yet. One is Proto-Yahweh, before Abraham brought it to Egypt as Ea, the moon god. And before this, it was more of a water god in Sumer called Ea or Enki. And the thing about Enki is he saved man from the deluge. So this explains why in the Old Testament God changes his mind, but you're not allowed to have any other gods. So God first causes the deluge, then saves man from the deluge. Seems to be at cross purposes. God can't make up his mind. In the Sumerian myths, there's two gods. There's a higher god who tries to wipe out mankind because mankind, which has just been created, is breeding too quickly and taking over the planet. There is overpopulation. We need to kill them. And Enki or Ea saves man. He tells him how to build a boat. He saves him. Just fascinating. And so he's the technology god, the water god. God is the water god, creates the flood, you see, the water god. So Ea is the water god. So clear relations to Min as well. But this became more of a moon god by the time it got to Egypt. And then eventually it was still a kind of bathing baptismal god for possibly the Romans as Jupiter, possibly. And as Yahweh, which is the bathing god. So Jesus clearly is associated with this as well. He's also associated with the mountain religion, the Sarmatian religion. God, it's a complex story, isn't it? So someone says, what are your thoughts on the... well, we're not going to talk about that. No. Okay, let's go. Mike says, do you believe there could be lost Easter Island Maui in the Pacific Ocean and under many layers of the volcanic tuff in and around the island? Yeah, because why do they have the same artworks as Göbekli Tepe? And as far as I know, I might be wrong, you don't see these artworks in America. So these Easter Island statues are actually 10,000 years old. And they're not done in the 1500s. They're really old. And if they are really old, yes, there'll be tons more. Great Monkey King, don't forget confession. The Pope had an intelligence network. And with only literate clergy, the church knew all communication. Yeah, that's right. Some of the research I did for my PhD, Robin Hood, I never ended up writing a papers, and I apologize to my professor because he was helping me with it, but just the COVID interrupted, life interrupted. But what was happening in the 1200s, England became a papal state. King John sold England to the Pope, and England was a papal state for about, and no historian covers this, so we don't know how long it was a papal state, but probably until Edward Longshanks or even later. And because it was a papal state, envoys were being sent over to England, and there was a nationalist movement. Robin Hood had something to do with this, and the Pope was complaining to the king that some of his envoys had been killed, some of his spies had been killed by the English nobles who were rebelling against King John and against the Pope. So this is a huge. This is why people look at why Magna Carta. See, people say Magna Carta, the rights of the nobles, but why? Why? Because they were under occupation from the Pope. That's why. So Magna Carta isn't in isolation. It's not the end of the story. It's just the clue to the underlying story. Right. Yeah. So Fox Hunt says, wonder where the luminary Venus comes into play with Venus flytrap. Oh, because it's a crescent. Maybe. So when you look at Venus for a telescope, it looks like a shimmering moon. It can be a crescent or a gibbous or whatever. And also Venus sort of jumps around the sky a bit. It's actually hard to predict where Venus will appear, apparently. Sometimes it disappears in the evening and very quickly reappears in the morning. And for this reason, there was an old mythology that there was an extra planet. So Volker says there are Anunnaki ships that have entered the solar system, porting through the sun more than 10 years ago. That's a very interesting one. Who knows? We don't know. Like, someone says, "Oh, that's not true," but hang on a sec. We're imprisoned on this planet. This is another world out there, right? Who knows? I don't know. Ben Hayes says, I do agree there was a flood, but the story does not have to be true. Yeah. Fox Hunt says the basement windows in the old world architecture is a giveaway of a flood in the 1800s. Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually I've seen photos of early Melbourne where this has happened, and there are areas where you're on the footpath and you're looking down, and there are windows down there. And I sort of thought the road must have been raised as well. That's another thing, because what happened was there was initially a dirt road, and the dirt roads in early Melbourne, they had massive hardwood tree stumps in them that no one wanted to remove. So for about 10, 15 years in early Melbourne, or 30 years, there were these tree stumps, and there's still one surviving. I took a fan of the channel to see it when he visited Melbourne, and they used it as for stubbing out cigarettes. And it's still fine. It's still a hardwood stump. It hasn't rotted away from 200 years ago. Iron bark. And over time, they built a Victorian road. There may have been a wooden road first. They may have simply built a Victorian road, a cobblestone road on top of that. And then when they resurface roads, they do it the British way here with asphalt. They just kept put layer on layer on layer, and maybe the road builds up over time, and maybe that's why the windows are low as well. So different ways of doing it. I don't know. Greetings, David. Nancy says, yes, we've covered that. A boredom victim. Oh no. Says, hope that resolves. Says the ships are electrical in nature and need the energy of planets or stars to recharge periodically. Great Monkey King says, Anunnaki. Enki. What does ki mean? All right, I'm going to type ki in Sumerian. Ki. In Sumerian, Ki was the goddess of the earth and the chief consort of the sky god An. Hang on, there we go. She was also known as the mother of earth or mother nature. Interesting. And I'm trying to think of any English or other analog for Ki. I can't really think of one. Anyway, all right. Yeah, interesting. Chi light. Chi, yeah, could be. Remember long ago I made the video, I said the Chi and the Ba, the Chi and the Fo of Chinese mythology are actually the Ka and the Ba of Egyptian mythology, showing that all this has an old world origin. Immigrants coming into Egypt and carrying with them the basically something very similar to the Chinese understanding of nature. Yes. So what else have people wrote here? Because I'm keen to see what people are into at the moment. Titanium Man says 2 women resurrected date palms from seeds from the time of Jesus. Oh, interesting. What else do we have here going all the way back? I think I missed a few at the start. So I know I didn't miss any. That's okay. That's all right. That's okay. Well, 41 viewers. It's ticking up. So Titanium Man says, what is your theory of the knobs on Mesoamerican walls? On this channel, we've made a lot of videos saying, oh, this must be it. This must be it. This must be it. At the end of the day, who knows? But I don't know. What's your theory? I think I said something like they were there in order to help separate the rocks after forming them, possibly. I'm not sure. But the latest theory we had was they're actually built lying down. The wall is built lying down, and it leavens like with a. You simply need to put a leavening agent that creates air bubbles, and the stones will rise and solidify, and that might be how you get those lumps. Yeah, I can't remember what I said about the nubs in that recent. It was a few months back or a year back, so I can't remember. David Harris says the Black Diamond Corner at Port Adelaide has already engulfed a barber shop and public restroom. I don't know any link. I don't know anything about this, David. One fan of the channel actually showed some photos from near Canberra. There's somewhere in New South Wales. There's a hotel. And she sent me all these pics, and basically the hotel seems to be built on top of some massive megalithic structure. and there are all these old houses nearby, and people assume they're colonial houses, but they're also megalithic because they're polygonal. So, and I thought, wow, I'm gonna have to see this one day. I've forgotten where it is exactly, but it's actually a famous hotel. I think it's in Canberra or something like that. And so there's been a lot before us, and we just assume. I can't believe how much they assume. I was watching a TV show the other day, and they're actually showing the Minoan stuff in Crete. It was like a travel show on TV, and they had some professor banging on saying, "Oh well, people first arrived here 7,000 years ago, and they were hunter gatherers and very primitive, and they didn't leave a great deal, and we don't know what language they spoke." And I was thinking, mate, people have probably been living on Crete for millions of years. This 7,000 years ago thing would only work literally if the moon god had just invented us yesterday. Don't you think? Puppet Bike says, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk. David Harris says, the knobs. They are present in all megalithic. That's right. They're all around. They're worldwide. That alone is evidence of a worldwide, backing up what Hayadal said decades ago. So Nancy Volker says, check Paul Cook on the knobs. He did an interesting experiment. He said electricity was used in the manufacturing process of the stone work. Oh, could be. How would it be used? So electricity can be used to crystallize things. That's a possibility. Titanium Man says, my theory is they used them to walk the stones, possibly. Oh, possibly, yeah. David Harris says, is underground and now probably forgotten. Daily Wrong says, do you understand or can translate Egyptian? No one can. No one can really, unless you're a real expert. Most people are pretending. It's the same with Latin, that most people are pretending to understand it. No one really does, because to really understand it, you have to be brought up in that world. But it's easy if you want to only know a few things. For example, there's an Egyptian alphabet, very similar to our alphabet. The letters look kind of the same, except they're pictures. So an E is an ear of wheat, for example. And once you see that, you start to understand how it can work. Random Box, any thoughts on how those Egyptian jars are made? Insane precision that is not possible with copper tools. Right. Oh, yeah, that's right. So long ago, I'll tell you what happened here. So long ago, I read in the 1972 Britannica that the Egyptian jars of the pre-dynastic are higher quality than any subsequent jars for all Egyptian history, first dynasty onwards. And then I know everyone started talking about this on the YouTube. Right? Okay. No idea. I've never really looked into it, actually. Yeah, but if there was higher technology in the pre-dynastic, that's obvious evidence that the pre-dynastic was just as glorious as the post-pre-dynastic, and that's also evidence that the pyramids, which are basically at the start, third, fourth dynasty, at the start of Egyptian history, must have a pre-dynastic hangover. Fox Hunt says, I think we've been tampered with. Right. Titanium Man says, Nancy, I think I saw that it's called vitrification. David says, yes, we have to be millions of years old. And I'll tell you why. One of the clues is that, where's the precursor? It's not Lucy. Lucy's apparently a chimpanzee or a modified chimpanzee. That's not a precursor. Where's the aquatic precursor from Asia? There's no intermediary between these monkeys and us. We can't find them. Why can't we find them? Are the precursors the mythological orcs and all that of the past? But what are they? Where's the bones? Why can't we find them? In fact, we probably find more dinosaurs than we do precursors of us. And if we can't find the precursor, we're really old, right? Same with DNA. There's a book, 7 Clues to the Origin of Life, and the author basically comes to one of the conclusions is DNA is not the original system because there's no precursor. There's no genetic precursor to DNA. That should be evidenced on the planet. It isn't. Just one of the precursors is stone and crystallization. There's no precursor. My conclusion would be that DNA was formed on another planet and it took over Earth like a weed and outcompeted the other genetic systems. Puppet, okay. Boredom says that he's going to watch a movie because he's bored. Okay. Have a good night. Have a good night, Boredom. Yes. Puppet Bike says, "What are your thoughts on the fact that the civil wars on the battlefield were only painted, but not photographed?" Uh, by the military artists, yeah. Well, apparently it's because a photograph is kind of boring, isn't it? And also to justify his pay. I mean, if he's going to be employed as a painter, you're going to want some paintings. And I believe in the 19th century, paintings would have been a lot more valuable than photographs, maybe. So Van Groot says, "Charles, are we on the 18th golden age?" Van Groot, I don't know what you mean by that. You're going to have to elaborate for us. So Fox Hunt says, "There were ways to manipulate photographs way back." David says, "Definitely a high precision 5-axis computer controlled mill." So you're thinking some kind of CNC machine for these ancient Egyptian vases. And you know what? People like you are the best qualified to say how it was done, because archaeologists ain't builders, they ain't craftsmen, they don't think about it like that. So Venus says, "Did you address the follow-up on your linguistic search for Giza?" I'm not quite sure what. Oh, that's right. I made a little post on the community tab. I said, Giza, Gaza, and Gozo in Malta. They all sound like Caesar. So you have these royal sites, and then you have Rome, founded by basically an almost royal type man called Caesar. Fox Hunt says, "I'm not a dirty space monkey." Righto. David says, "Tectonics destroys everything, probably by design." Nancy says, "There are 3 Sphinx, all ancient Egyptian, Romanian, and Pakistani." Christopher says, "Oh, hey, still alive. Just got here. How goes it, mate? Good to see you." Venus Craig says, "Floating around on a ball, traveling through space." Fox Hunt. Because Fox Hunt said, "I'm not a dirty space monkey." He's very adamant about that too. And Fox Hunt, and he adds at max 700. Okay, good. Lexor is suggesting something. A 5th column has interrupted the stream due to mentioning the missing link. So, Senor Big Weenie says, "Not a chance self-replicating cells happened accidentally." Yeah, there's a huge technology behind them, but and the point I was making earlier was there was this author who wrote the book 7 Keys to the Origin of Life, and he said there's no clue about this origin on Earth. So how did it happen? Where's the evolution of the genetic code? It's not evident. So Christopher says, "Maybe it's difficult to find camera film during a civil war." That's a good point, actually. Monkey King says, "During the 19th century, people had to keep still for photos." Good point. Good point. And that was, I think, until the early 20th century, was it not? Until finally they came up with those, what were they called? The ones that the Kodak cameras that the Tsar was using. They had brownies, because they were in a brown packet and you wore it around your neck. Yeah, those ones. They were the first proper portable cameras. And not until the 20th century. So Rodney Thomas says, "Charles, why didn't Western universities, except Greece, teach classes on Byzantine history?" I'll tell you, okay, it's because it's not glorious. It's not glorious. And my theory is that the Byzantine, and other people have said this, the Byzantine was a kind of basically everyone had a government job. It was a kind of socialism, strict absolute monarchy. Everyone had their place. And I don't believe there was much funding for education or any of this at all. If there was, you were just a monk stuck somewhere. And I don't believe there were any of these type of academies that you had in the ancient classical period, which means that we just don't have the authors being produced in the Byzantine times. And also they weren't very rich, because it was an absolute monarchy. It was always high taxing, and unlike in ancient Rome or ancient Greece, big entrepreneurs couldn't just appear and become leading citizens, or there would be a massive conflict, a massive war. So the Byzantine Empire was kind of about maintaining the Roman legacy by keeping everyone down and keeping the king on top. Whereas if you look at Rome, Rome's growth, it was more an unstable situation where you had these fluid aristocrats, and you could become an aristocrat by being a very rich man, and there was lower taxation in classical Roman times, and you could suddenly buy an army and take over Gaul, or like Crassus was doing, buy an army, and he tried to take over Persia. And none of that was possible for the entire Byzantine period. It was just an absolute monarchy. We're trying to preserve Rome, trying to keep what we got, unwilling to take too many risks. I think that's why no one's interested in it. But it's a fun history. And there was one fun king, Andronicus, and I believe he must be Titus Andronicus of Shakespeare. It must be based on an Italian play. The plays were very. He was kind of like a Vlad the Impaler type figure, but you don't read anything about him. Sorry to blab on so much. Let's answer these questions because that's why you're here. Nancy Volker says, Matthew Brady was famous for his Civil War photography. It was difficult to move around with that equipment. Other photographers set up shop in camps during the war in America, 1860s. Titanium Man says, Civil War photographs were lithographs. David Harris says, yes, qualified. A recent experiment revealed that modern milled copy of an ancient vase was 10 times less accurate than the original. The dimensions of these vases is based on radian. Is that what's a radian? Is that the radius of an atom? Radian. What's a radian? I don't know. It's an angle. Or is it the rad, based on the International System of Units and angular measure? Okay. Okay, a radian is 180 degrees. So what you're saying is they're perfectly flat. David says, highly advanced mathematics involved. Mike says, why do the Maui have big noses? Oh, do they? They could be lunar shaped. So I've suggested, because they're Min. So first, for starters, they're all standing like that. So they're with a big belly. So they're like a crescent moon. Maybe that's a crescent as well. Yeah. Gibbon, Monkey King says Gibbon's decline and fall includes the Byzantine Empire. It does, and apparently Gibbon slowed down while he was writing that bit because he was just less interested in it. He had to learn Greek instead of Latin to read the sources. And the problem with the Byzantine period is you're looking at the collapse of a civilization. Even when Justinian was building the empire with kind of almost Mongolian shock cavalry tactics when he was trying to rebuild it, even that was a kind of dark age because of the plague and possibly the comet in Western Europe that hit, and it was and there was massive taxation. And when you look at what what was that bloke's name who wrote The Secret History? He said that Justinian would spend all night long, not sleeping like a demon, but pacing around his palace, trying to formulate new ways to ruin his own empire and ruin his people. So he seems to have been a very high-taxing king. So it was not really that nice a time to be alive. And whenever you read about the Byzantine Empire, you don't read about the culture, you just read about the killings and the civil wars and the defeats. Who wants to read about an empire which has defeat after defeat after defeat? Don't you think? So Titanium Man says, David, the tricky part is the accuracy even with the handles. Lexmore said, isn't the caste system as old as history itself? It is. It is. I have a Pakistani friend. He says that in Pakistan, people will say, people won't say where you're from. They'll say, well, they might say that, but they'll also say, oh, what tribe are you from? What tribe are you? Oh, yeah, right. Because they're all ranked, aren't they? Yeah. Polynesian. So Titanium says Polynesian people have big noses. Well, that's the thing. Polynesian people are giants. They seem to be a darker race mixed with some giant race, and that giant race that they're mixed with is no longer exists on the planet. See, there's all these clues, and when you follow the clue to its conclusion or to its implication, you see that the world doesn't actually provide an answer to the implication. Anyway. So David says, that's why 5 axes are needed to carve these ancient Egyptian pottery. Puppet Bike says the Maori have big noses to look down on you. Ah. Senior Big Weenie says, are there any new ideas as to what the nubs on the sides of the megaliths are? Last good idea I saw was your poured concrete idea. Wondering if there's been any progress on those. Not really. I think I said something like I can't even remember what I said when I made a video about it. But as far as I know, there's still no good idea. There's nothing that truly satisfies. An idea has to satisfy, right? Or it's never going to take over. So Christopher says 2 pi radians, a full circle, 360 degrees. Fox Hunt says some smart mofos in here. Lexmore says a radian is a set angle as far as I remember, but not a full 180. David says, I think most monarchs are and were a-holes. Yeah, pretty much. Like, think what sort of person you have to be to say, I'm the next Byzantine ruler. I'm going to be the next Roman emperor. Me. What sort of person do you have to be? And you have to be prepared to do what it takes. The Byzantines still calling themselves the Roman Empire. Mike says, do you believe the Maori depict non-human people? Well, that's the thing. They seem to depict the moon is what I was suggesting. That's why they look like funny. They could be Min, the moon giant, the moon god. They could be statues of Min. So there was a Polynesian bloke came on here and he said, it was an insult saying this is Min, the pea god. These are ancestors. That's what it is. And I think I said something like to him, mate, the long ears were killed. They were all killed off by the short ears. And if you're descended from them, then you're one of the people who killed off the long ears. And the long ears have a greater claim to those statues because they ruled the bloody island, you know. So I'm not sure you could be telling me they're ancestors. Anyway. Puppet Bike says, I would love to discuss the nubs offline. It's best thing since drilling a hexagon into Saturn's North Pole. I remember the drill experiment. It creates a hexagonal resonance. So Saturn's actually spinning super fast, so it's elongated. And so that's why hexagon. If Jupiter was spinning faster, it might have one too. Monkey King says, Byzantine is a modern invention. It is indeed. And the word too is a modern invention. And the word has come to mean bureaucracy, because even if people don't know ancient Greek and don't read the records, they've come to the conclusion that this empire was utterly dysfunctional, and we know that things become too dysfunctional if there are too many chefs in the kitchen. So Puppet Bike says satisfaction guaranteed. Good to know. Fox Hunt says, maybe urine is what's missing from the concrete mix. I know it's out there, but I thought, yeah, it could be. So I'll have to make a video about the Roman concrete. There's some old recipes, and urine is sometimes part of it, yeah. Christopher says, supper time, have fun. Nancy says, there are reports of the Solomon Islands and the Japanese fighting giants during World War II. Wow. Jules Verne says, they can rank themselves on how much whiter they are than other castes. Yeah, that might be the case. Yeah, whites are very popular in Asia. That's 100%. Yeah, I had a friend. She went to, was it Thailand or Cambodia or something? She said she was a blonde. People were taking photos of her, and just because of that, you know. Anyway, yeah. Yes. Fascinating discussion, isn't it? So we started off this video. We're actually saying, I'll just recap that for the new viewers. There's a disquiet erupting on X. I saw one person saying, we've been lied to. Göbekli Tepe's a lie. The same artwork is on Easter Island, and Easter Island is recent. And I said, well, hang on a sec. Göbekli Tepe is the most recent of these sites to have been excavated. So the dogma is still driving the dating of Easter Island and proto-dynastic Giza and pre-dynastic artworks in Egypt. But it's not driving the dating of Göbekli Tepe, which was done more recently, as 10,000 BC. So could all these other sites be 10,000 years old? And a video will appear. I'll make a video about this topic. Can we date parts of Giza to 10,000 BC as a result of that? Just the artworks. Because the pre-dynastic Egyptian looks an awfully lot like what we're seeing at Göbekli Tepe. Even on one of the Nama tablets, there is literally something that looks a lot like one of those, like that. I called it a phoenix, that bird with the beak on the Gobeckli Tepe relief. Great Monkey King says there are reports of American soldiers fighting hairy giants in Vietnam War. David Harris says the nubs seem to come in at least pairs. I remember a Peruvian friend mentioned once in the 70s that they are the paws of the puma protecting from inside. Wow. Yeah, interesting. Nancy says pig's blood was found in an old Roman cement recipe in a port in Lebanon. It's still hardening. That's right. That's right. So I found a Roman concrete recipe. Americans were manufacturing Roman concrete in the 19th century. There were companies which manufactured it and sold it. And you can find this in old catalogs. And I found one recipe. It was a type of clay from Vesuvius, which probably no longer exists. And bull's blood as well was one of the things. I'd like to make some one day, but just been so busy. In the garage is full of junk. I can't even use it. I've got all this chemistry equipment. I can't even use it. Fox Hunt says the resonant frequency of Giza is apparently an F sharp minor seventh. Wow, interesting. But that would make sense. I've written a book. I've spent all last year writing a book, and I'd like to bring it out. And basically, the Pythagoreanism is based on the music system and the alchemy system, just like the DNA system, just like the human. There's no ancestors to be found. There's no ancestors of Western music. There's no ancestors of alchemy. There's none of this. But it's all the same. It's all the same system based on astronomy, isn't it? Great Monkey King says there is a legend of throwing a girl into a bronze bell that cries when rung. Wow. Troy says, "Do you know of Mud Fossil University?" Sorry for spelling. It's very yes. Mud Fossil actually came up with the Rickard idea. That Jimmy talks about. That I believe that was a Mud Fossil video. I used to watch his channel just before I started my channel. I was watching his channel a lot. And I was kind of making videos the same as he was making, but tapping the screen and all that. It's fun stuff. And a lot of what he says, even though it totally obliterates the dogma, it kind of makes sense. So it's still appealing. David Harris says, "Hang on, I'll get my guitar." Oh. Daily Wrong says, "Very magnanimous, Charles. Love the info. Thank you." Oh, thanks for watching. It's fun to see what people are up to. Lexor says, "Studying the code of reality." Yes, one thing I've come to realize in the last year, Pythagoreanism, Druidism, Buddhism, they're all the same religion. They all had monks dressing in different colored costumes, and one of them became Catholicism. And they all believed in the trivium and quadrivium. You put them together, you have 7 different disciplines, the sciences. And so the creation in 7 days. And they tried to create a massive interrelated system based on astronomy. So I'm bringing out a book based on this, and this is in alchemy, and it's in the other thing. And they were all originally this one worldwide people that conquered the world and built the nubs and all this. So Senior Biggie says, "Does that specific chord have a unique resonance in the structures?" And Lexor is contributing that these are spirals, which are the code of reality. Nice. Very nice. Yeah. What else? So we've talked a bit about Giza and the mudflood and the dinosaurs. But what's the common theme that brings it all together? It's all of this is in violation of the current dogmas. But the scientist shouldn't be restricted by the dogmas, or he's in a Middle Ages type situation, is he not? I mean, he should really investigate, So Fox Hunt says, "I made a chord with a tone generator and it blocks out outside noise." Wow. So Nancy Volker says, "The Romans invented the bronze bulls for torture. They placed a victim inside the bull, then lit a fire under the belly. I think this is enough to give you an idea of how it worked." Yeah. And I heard Isn't it an interesting story? Apparently, the king decided to execute the inventor in this way because he was so horrified by the invention, which in itself raises some paradoxes, does it not, about the king's personality? um, hello, Hitman. Lexor says the fundamental frequency of the structure. So Senor says, what's your opinion on the Atlantis location, Team Ricat or not? Oh, um, I reckon Jimmy's work's awesome. And so there's another like David Hansen, and he's really good. And he's found gigantic canals all over North Africa, and he's found um, canals on the Ricat. So this Ricat, whatever the hell it is, I don't know. I guess it's an old volcano, but it doesn't mean it wasn't other things as well. It wasn't a hill fort or something like that. Maybe. Should Atlantis, and I put this to you guys, should Atlantis just have one location if the story is indeed 10,000 years old, as Plato insisted? Because Plato said he doesn't mean 900 years ago. He actually said that. The archaeologist came out saying it's the sea peoples, it's 900 years before. No, because Plato wrote, he literally means what he says, 9,000 years, blah, 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 before. He meant that. And when you look at what was happening in that time, the sea level was in fact rising dramatically in that time. But not just in one place, everywhere. Right? So why would that make sense if that was wrong? Right? So Fox Hunt says pure sine waves. The dominant is, maybe I should face that way so I can, there we go, that's better. So Nancy said, same for the inventor of the guillotine. Really? So the inventor of the guillotine was executed by the guillotine? I did not know that. Oh, that's unbelievable. Yeah. Senior Big Weenie says, exactly. Naturally formed doesn't mean it wasn't used as a location for a city. That's right. And that's the argument I made about the Bosnian pyramid. If it looks like a pyramid, why can't you use it as a pyramid? It doesn't matter if it's part natural, part man-made. It's part natural, so it can't be a pyramid. Well, it depends on what you want a pyramid to be. If you want a pyramid to be wholly man-made, I guess it's not. If a pyramid can be a pyramid in spirit and it can be used as a pyramid, I guess it's a pyramid. Senior Big Weenie says Atlantis is definitely worldwide. Yeah. Yeah, because think about it. If the story is from 10,000 BC, that story is very old, and it would have accumulated like a snowball other stories around it from other civilizations which collapsed. So it can't be a pure legend, and that's why we don't know where it is. So Senior Big Weenie says with a central hub. Fox Hunt says Atlantis could be the entire realm. Jules Verne, I became so disappointed with St. Patrick. And he adds, although it is the year of the snake soon. Lexor says, have you heard the phrase in the story, beyond the pillars of Heracles, was added later? Is this true? I haven't heard that, but it might be true. Beyond the pillars. What does it mean? It means beyond the Atlas Mountains, which are the pillars. It means beyond the Mediterranean. What does Mediterranean mean? How old is that word? I don't know. It just means middle. It means middle of the land, middle of the terrain. So the Mediterranean separates all the land. Yeah, that's right. It separates Asia from Europe, from Africa, the middle of the terrain. Wow. So in other words, that means Mediterranean is the middle of the world. So Jerusalem, it's on the Mediterranean, it's the middle of the world. So is Rome, so is Greece. They're all in the middle of the world, right? Huh. So when you go out of the middle of the world, you get to Atlantis. Does that mean it could be America? It could be Britain? What do you think? What do you think, guys? Lexor says the Earth made the stone in the first place. David Harris says, I think the Ricat structure fulfills all the criteria described, the only place. Saturn Rooster says, brother, your investigations into the Great Conjunction were great. There is so much more this thread has to... Yes. So I've recently offered an explanation for why the planets lining up are bad. They're always bad. Planets spread apart are always good in ancient history. And the Persians developed an entire cosmology going back to actually 30,000 years to when the Carolina Bays happened. And they're saying the alignments created the world and will end the world. This alignment will end the world if it happens in Scorpio or whatever. And this is all mathematics. And they formed a massive cosmology based on the alignments. So just as we form our cosmology against a supposed Big Bang 15 billion years ago, they formed everything based on how the planets are aligned and how long it takes to align. And I suggested recently, if Jupiter and Saturn line up together, and this is one French author, he was a mathematician, he said, the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions are what formulated the Mayan calendar in the first place, why it's ending in 2012. It's actually 2020. That happened in 2020, and it was a very close great conjunction. It was another star of Bethlehem. But if those planets are lining up, there's nothing protecting the Earth from incoming comets and debris, which can then end the civilization. And hence you have a clockwork of rise and fall of civilizations just from the alignments of the planets. As we know happened in the 90s. Remember that comet hitting into Jupiter? Imagine if that head into Earth instead in, 94 or something? Comet Shoemaker. And that's not all. What about genetic debris? This fog. The fog was slimy. My brother told me, I didn't know this because it was a lockdown. He said during 2020, the sun was not functioning correctly or something, and the driveway was actually slimy. And I thought, well, this is bacteria. Did the bacteria fall from space? Was it, is this what happens? Was there some genetic contamination of space debris? Fred Hoyle said something like interstellar dust is actually the same wavelength as an E. coli bacteria in size, and that would generate the wavelength of what light is being filtered out when interstellar dust blocks it. That blocks that light. And all this is related to the conjunctions. And this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was the biggest thing for an ancient thinker to contemplate, especially in Persia. And it was a Persian, Giznap or something like that. He's the one who predicted Jesus, but no one knows his name. We just know his followers, his disciples, Giznap or something. His disciples were called the Three Wise Men. So check my planetary cosmology video a few months ago. That's a really good video, but it's only got like 1,200 views. Sorry to blab on. Senior Big Weenie says, would you be interested in doing a Giza tour and vlogging it? Would love to see you do that. One of my life goals, but flying over the ocean and all. I don't know if I even want to go to Egypt because of the apparently get harassed a lot there. So maybe I'll get the shoe polish out and, just touch myself up a bit before I go. David Harris says, I think the Ricat structure fulfills all the criteria described the only place. Nancy says, Eye of Africa is suspected as being the ruins of an Atlantic city. Hitman says, that round thing is in Africa? Jules Verne says, nobody wants a stellarium or more. Rodney says, remember February 28th is the 7-planet alignment. Oh! So currently, Mars is closest, which means it's in opposition. It was closest 15 January I was looking at, but it's kind of low and fuzzy to see any detail on the surface. But above it, I noticed the other day, there's a planet. That must be a planet above it because there's nothing. It's not twinkling, so it's a planet. It must be Saturn. And over there is Jupiter. Oh, they're all together. The amount of conjunctions we've had in the last 4 or 5 years is enormous, more than in my lifetime and your lifetimes. And it just keeps happening. They're all coming together. This is what the Mayans knew. And that Mayan calendar, it's in ancient Persia as well in a different form. It's the same calendar. It's based on the alignments. So long ago, they said all these alignments will end the world. And it's the basis of our millennial system as well, this calendar, because they tried to make it so that the world ends on the millenniums. Because it's about 1,000 years between the Jupiter-Saturn big conjunctions like is happening now. Yeah. So Lexor says the Ricat in Mauritania in the west of Saharan Africa. Yes, indeed. Mysterious place. Who knows? Who knows? Because if you think back, hang on a sec, 20,000 years ago, it might have been, it was at least a savanna. It was a nice place. A savanna is what is a savanna? It's kind of like a half desert, half forest. I believe it's still not enough to grow crops like farms, but you can hunt there. There's animals, plenty of animals. Maybe it was a nice place. Yeah. Fox Hunt says, We don't know what year it is, though. That's the problem. We don't know. We don't know exactly. David says, thanks for watching. Yeah. What else? Give me something. Give me something else. Come on, people. Give me something else. David Harris says pyramid means fire inside. That is one interpretation. Yes, indeed, it is. I believe the word pyre is from pile. So the root is actually not necessarily fire, but pile. Maybe. Or barrow, even barrow. Something is buried. Yeah, very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. So Foxconn says maybe it's the year of our Lord 1025. And in fact, what did happen? So according to the ancient Persians and also the ancient Mayans, every millennium there's a kind of new world, and the old world is destroyed. And that actually did happen. 1000 was a terrible time. England's regime, which was several centuries old, became replaced by French Romanized Vikings. And here's the thing. Did these Normans speak Middle English? I'm wondering, did the Normans were Germans? Who the hell spoke Old English and who spoke Middle? Did the Normans actually speak Middle English? Because they say, oh, they must have spoken French. But hang on a sec. Are they not recently arrived Vikings? Did they suddenly all convert to speaking? And do you know what? We don't know. People assume we know. But when I study the Middle Ages, it became abundant to me that the problem with the Middle Ages is there's no vernacular voice, which means there's no popular voice. We don't know what the people were thinking. There's no newspaper. There's a few rhymes that survive. And these were written by aristocrats, not by common people. So we actually don't know what languages the people used in the Middle Ages, the common people. We know that the aristocrats might have used their language or the Latin language, but we don't know what the people were doing or speaking. So it's a bit of a mystery, that Middle English. I reckon it's from one of them is from Asia. There's an old story. Do you know there's an old story that the Engling people in one of the old English chronicles come from Asia, Central Asia. So this is either the Middle English speakers or the Old English speakers. Not only did the Brythonic people come from Asia, the Welsh, the Wall people, but the English that also came from Asia, one of them. And hence Middle English replaced Old English. Old English did not evolve into it mixed with Middle English, but if you look it up, it's a different language. It didn't turn into Middle English. Anyway. Senior Big one says thoughts on skeptics such as Sharma is it Simon Sharma? Would he be the historian? Claiming Tepe, must be a different guy, was still built by hunter-gatherers regardless of obvious massive organizational effort, requiring advanced living capabilities. Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. Göbekli Tepe, they have excavated a tiny area. This was the nerve center of an empire, right? So, and when you look at Göbekli Tepe, I would say there must have been a massive population. And a massive population is not supported by hunter-gathering. So it has to be agriculture. And I reckon the dogma is preventing publication or analysis of any found agricultural grains as having supported that country. Everyone knows that throughout history, all the peasants always ate bread. So apparently, guess what? Fun fact. I think in Henry VIII's England, 60 acres of farmland supports one person for a year on bread. And the peasants and workers just ate bread. But they ate different types of bread. So the really crusty, yucky, burnt stuff at the bottom was for the lowest of the workers. And you got better bread as you went up the food chain. And eventually the abbots ate only white bread. And the king, I think because he was so far up the food chain, he didn't even eat bread at all or any agriculture. He only ate meat. So he always had unfortunately, some of the diseases associated with too much protein, because I believe we do need a lot of vegan. Maybe. I don't want to argue with anyone, though. But actually, I'm losing weight that way by avoiding the bread, Anyway, whatever. So David Harris says English was the traders' language. Well, that's the thing. There's so many English words in ancient Egyptian. If you look at the Egyptian alphabet, it's actually based on literally. I'm getting really controversial here, but E is an ear of wheat. In fact, if I bring up Egyptian alphabet, the Egyptian alphabet, the ancient Egyptian alphabet, and you can Google this yourself. It's so if I just I'm going to give you a link. Okay, there we go. That'll do. So there's a link, and you can do this for yourself. And so Baron Blackett and Wilson, they did this for Welsh, and they said, well, hang on, these are Welsh. Well, they're European as well. A is a giant bird. B is a leg. C is a cup. D is a hand or an arm. E is an ear of wheat. F is a snake. Viper. H is a hook. It works in English. I is again an ear of wheat. J is a snake. K is a cup. R is a mouth or an oval. S is a hook. L is a lion, Leo. M is an owl. U is a little baby chick. V is a viper. W is a baby chick. X is a cup or a hook. Y is again an ear of wheat. Anyway. But lots of that works in English. So anyway. Oh, sorry, people. Let's say. So Lexor says commoners. Well, that's the thing. If you actually look up origin of Middle English and how it took over, it actually says on Wikipedia the origin is controversial. They don't necessarily agree about its origin. So Lexor, commoners have the pagan, non-writing, oral practice of history and teaching, perhaps. Yeah, that's right. I've actually come to the conclusion last year, based on studying English and in terms of Pythagoreanism, that it is the Druid. It was a language of elite Druids, and English seems to have absorbed all the elite Pythagorean words. So it was like a snob language, and it's really old. And if you actually, people who investigate English magically, they see that English is actually, one of the peculiarities about it is it's if you look at the relations of words, and I don't have any examples off the top of my head, it's a sacred language. It makes a lot of sense for sacred thinking. Anyway, so Nintendo fan says we Germans are the OG original Anglo-Saxons. If you think, yes, you are from Saxony, which is northern Germany. You are, and that's a huge country. Hitman V says an anvil will float on Mercury. Maybe they used Mercury. Lexor, going back a bit, Lexor says, do you think the cataclysm, something like a super lightning strike through space between the planets during an alignment? I love that plasma cosmology. That is the true cosmology, plasma cosmology. And it's not popular because the people who are currently the cosmologists don't do it. That's the only reason. So JPD says, have you ever looked closely at the Lena River region in northern Russia? It's staggering how it resembles well-planned complex city architecture. So that's triggered something. So I've noticed, I've read some books on mammoths, and I've noticed an anomaly. Based on the mammoth distribution, and a mammoth was a tropical animal, apparently. Some of them had tropical vegetation found in the mouths when they snap froze. They say the coat is for cold, but it would also make it maybe a bit, I don't know. But apparently, some of them say it's a tropical animal. And here's the thing. I noticed the mammoth distribution, it's a lot stronger in Siberia than it is in Western Europe. One conclusion is that Western Europe was under ice and Siberia was warm. And suddenly that's all flipped. And why are they snap frozen? You can't just, a storm is not going to snap freeze unless the latitude suddenly changes. This mammoth thing is one of the biggest mysteries of all. Maybe that wiped out the rest of the dinosaurs. Oh, these mammoths, they're just confusing me. This is, and now you say in northern Russia, where the winter will kill you. There's a complex city. That's interesting. Wow. Fox Hunt says Mercury seems to have been integral in the spires for harnessing and distributing energy. Lexor says the Japanese have very sacred language and they seem to be really enjoy using English a lot in their media mixed in with their own. Ah. Nancy says Egyptian princess moved to Scotland after her family fell from power. There was always a trade among the coastline from the Mediterranean, North Sea, and Scandinavian and Russian coastal regions. Lexor says English being like a compilation. Like, yeah, I get the feeling from studying all this that English is kind of a it's the language of the Druids. And then what happened was this: because the Druids were so high in society, or the Pythagoreans, Pythagoreanism is basically the Celtic religion as well. That's what the Romans say. The Romans say the Celts seem to be Pythagorean, and the Gauls seem to have been writing with Greek characters. So did the Greek alphabet, in fact, not come from somewhere in Europe? And I'm saying that English is actually completely based on this Pythagorean in rhyming, and that'll be in my book. So I think what happened is there were pretenders. In order to elevate your social position, you would learn the language of the Druids, you'd learn English at the expense of the other Germanic languages. And eventually everyone started speaking using these elite words. The same thing happened when the Normans took over. Not only did Old English change to Middle English, but the French words appeared. So to be a snob, you'd start speaking French. And you'd use all the French words. And the French words are basically mean exactly the same thing as the English words, except they sound a bit more Roman. So that showed you were a Roman and not a conquered peasant, right? So Mike says, do you believe the Maui were once machines or robots made by the people of Mu that got turned into or covered up by volcanic stone over time or something? Oh, on Twitter, this bloke is Dr. Stinky McDougall, and he's contacted me, and I've watched some of his videos. I believe that might be his name on YouTube as well. And he is a genius, but his ideas are really, really far out there. So you have to throw out all the dogma to entertain those ideas, but they're really good. Ocean currents. David Turner says the loss of atmosphere temporarily. Nancy Volk says pole flips caused instant freezing of. That's the thing. People are snap frozen if say they venture into the Arctic or something like that. But the mammoths seem to have been snap frozen on an industrial scale. They didn't just wander into the wrong weather system. Any intelligent animal would know to migrate south for the winter, possibly, to get out of that. But these animals were taken by surprise and covered in there was a dust layer as well. They were covered in that. Something happened. Fox says, I've got to work. Nice surprise this evening. Much love to all. Cheers, West Virginia. Cheers, Fox Hunt. Jville, hey, how you doing? Nintendo fan says, American English is very similar to early 18th century Southern England English dialect. Chicago accent is probably the most. I love this comment. So Southern English. Southern English is the Australian accent. It's closest to what I'm saying now, which is a Melbourne accent. That is Southern England. So as soon as you leave London, what's left of the London accent disappears, and you have something like this accent. And then you keep going further, so then it'll turn into ancient regional accents very quickly. Yes, American English, it's similar to 18th century Southern English. And the thing about the American accent, it's the Irish accent, isn't it? Isn't it the Irish accent? And I've seen some people actually saying the Irish accent is the older version of England, the English accent, because don't forget, Ireland was absolutely colonized several times, firstly by King John, also by Henry VIII and his successors, Elizabeth and also Elizabeth. They massacred them, and the Irish will tell you, the Irish are a bit like the Liverpoolian people, because they will, I shouldn't say this, but it's a victim mentality. I love the Irish, but the way they explain it, it's like, we're the oppressed. And the Irish, I have to say, if they had the ancient Abrahamic religion, it's almost like Israel, we're the oppressed ones. Because they did have the ancient Abrahamic religion. They are based on that people as well, are they not? Because you see the same religion on the hilltop. So it's part of a long-term mentality, possibly. What are we talking about? Sorry. So He-Man says pole shifts could have something to do with Earth expand. Yes, expanding and shrinking. Yes, destabilizing. Because people think it can't do that, but actually astronomers know that stars do that. So if you look inside the Earth, there is a kind of a star, and no one really knows how it works. We assume it's all radioactivity, and they've done the calculations. Oh, radioactivity. But no one knows. Assumptions. You know what? I asked AI a few months ago to really explain to me why uranium tells us the age of the Earth. Really, I want you to really explain that to me, because I've never understood that. People say, oh, it's just half-life. That explains it. But I've never understood it. Why have I never understood it? Because it doesn't make sense. And so I kept probing it. And eventually I got it to admit, this is meta AI. I got it to admit that, oh, it's based on assumptions. And it told me, yes, it's based on, at some level, it's based on assumptions, the age of the Earth, all this radiation stuff. So it would be, I reckon it would be the same with the sun. It's all based on assumptions. Lord Kelvin actually gave up his arguments for a young Earth when radioactivity was invented in the early 20th century. He was saying it was 20 million years old. It was no more than 100 million years old. And it's all driven by, he said the entire solar output is driven by early comets of the solar system smashing into the sun and releasing energy. And therefore it can only be a few million years old. And then radioactivity put him in his place. The geologists were all saying to him, Earth's billions of years old. You're wrong, but we can't prove it. We just can't prove it. It's just a hunch. And the radioactivity confirmed it, and Lord Kelvin gave up. But I think he gave up too soon, because I think it's still assumptions. Right. Hey, California. So David says the builders of megalithic cut posts were the Atlanteans. Their culture is unknown, as no writing or pictographs can be found. And think how much has been destroyed. Apparently there were so many more serpent mounds. The serpent mound itself was nearly destroyed. It feels like a golf course to me. It's got a nice undulating feel. It'll be fun. Lexor says accents are preserved through exile, it seems. Well, that's the thing. You have think about an explosion of invasion, and then the invasion stops. And meanwhile, in the center of civilization, London, that accent is changing as new people arrive in London. But out here, the old accent stays the same, possibly. John Lackland, Javel says, always good to see you, Javel. You're always in the chats, I remember years ago. John Lackland got some of that emerald sod. Yes, he did. So he went there as a young man, and apparently it says in the Chronicle what happened was he was behaved so badly. I think he was laughing in the face of the Irish nobles, saying, hey, because these Normans, they kind of felt like they were right. They were kind of acting a bit like Romans, and they were like, oh, look at his long beard, and they were laughing at them, and apparently he alienated a lot of them, and he was just he just loved to be nasty to everyone around him, and as a result, by the time he died, he was only in control of a tiny part of England, and then he fell into a river and died. Or he was put. Have you heard another story? The one Shakespeare tells. This was in an old chronicle. What happened was this. There was a monk who was determined to kill King John. And he poisoned the food. And King John was suspicious, and he said, you eat it first. So the monk said, look, I really want to kill this guy. So he ate the food, and then he pretended he wasn't dying as a result, and then John ate it, and they both died. And that one's in the Shakespeare version, I believe. So there you go. So Nancy says, Scottish and Irish accents, but Scotland has a heavier influence in early American culture. Interesting. Also, if you go to Tasmania, the people look Irish. They have an Irish personality, very friendly. And in Victoria, it's different. Lots of Scots and more serious, especially in the country. Very serious, quiet folk, and they're hardworking, and they're more Scottish. And apparently New Zealand is really Scottish. Anyway. So But I think also Picts. I think there are a lot of Picts here as well, because I believe the Highlander Scots are a bit. They're the Picts, and I think the Lowlanders are the Scots, possibly. And one of them, the Picts, I believe they're the short Scots, and we have those. And the tall ones are more like the Northern Irish. They're basically this. They talk the same way. So Rodney says, I've read that that magnetic north is moving from Canada to Siberia. Could that affect the poles? Possibly. Jace Ventura, hello. David says American accent is Irish. Kiwis is Scottish. Australian accent is part of Cockney. Yeah, you're right. Melbourne accent. So we have a Melbourne poet called CJ Dennis, and if you want to look up the traditional Australian accent, it's got a lot of was, use. What is he thinks he's doing? What are you doing over there? And this is the convict Cockney accent, and then there's the Southern English accent as well, and that's made, both of them have joined to make the Australian accent. So C.J. Dennis immortalized that in some of his poetry. So Nancy says the migration from Britain was mostly in the 1700s and early 1800s. That's why accents are influenced from that time. Nintendo fan says, as a non-Brit, why do Irish have the victim complex more than Scottish? Is it because of the religious difference, Catholic versus Protestant, in history? I really don't know. But when you go to so here's the thing. So I'm on a tour bus in Ireland, and you never hear about this ever because obviously Australia is more driven by the British than the Irish. But when you're in Ireland and the people are talking to you, they say terrible things about the English. They say the English treated us worse than animals because what would happen is if you were starving during the potato famine, and you killed an animal that belonged to the law, they'll hang you or they'll send you to Australia. So the animal has got more rights than the Irish person, you know. I don't know, but it's true they were wiped out. They had to leave Ireland. Another thing is that the political system, they never had an industrial revolution. And so they say in Ireland that you can drink from all the rivers because there was no industry here, so it's all pristine. And there's this, and the whole of Ireland, it looks like it's kind of like Tasmania. You leave the city, there's not much there. There's just cows. You go to a tourist site, there's no tourists there. You can walk through abandoned ruins. You're not going to pay £10 like in £20 like in Britain. You can just walk through them, and there's no one there. There's just a few cows. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So Nintendo fan says, well, here's the thing. So in Northern Ireland, they say it was the English plan to exterminate them. The English plan in Northern Ireland was to set up this plantation and to eventually replace all the Irish with English and kill them all and work them to death. And the reason this plan didn't work is not because the English needed the Irish. Well, actually, they say the reason the plan didn't work is they couldn't get enough English to come over. And if they did, they would have just killed them all. Because English were also going to Australia, to India, everywhere, to America. So Nintendo fan says the most exotic accent for English is definitely Transylvanian, but extremely rare. Wow, haven't heard that one. Andrew Carnegie, yes. So the Scots have a the Scots act like. I'm going to say this. We know Asians are very good with business, and the Scots have a strong element which comes from Asia. Even if you look at Sean Connery, even someone like him, you look at him with squinted eyes. I see almost someone who looks almost Indian, almost. So they have that talent, you know. Anyway, Nintendo fan says, didn't the Romans kill off the Picts? Another thing about the Scots, they have names like in ancient Greece, Alexander, King Alexander. And the Slavs also have these names, Alexander. It's not really otherwise seen much in the West. Didn't the Romans kill off it? Maybe. Nancy says that the basic Canadian accents still have a strong Scottish influence. Yeah. Nancy says Boston, USA has very Irish influence to this day. Jayville says, I heard once Irish have trim ankles and wrists where the Scots are thick boned in those places. And this seems to be mostly true by my observation. Something about the Scots, so the Scots, this is a theory of mine, but you might not like it. The Scots. So it was a theory of who wrote the 13th tribe. It was a man called Arthur Koestler. I'm a big fan of him, even though I forgot his name. But he wrote a lot of books, and I'm going to have to. I wish I had time to read all his books, but one called the 13th tribe, and he says the Hungarians and the Khazars split apart, and he reckons the Hungarians were basically Khazars who didn't become Jewish. And I have a feeling that the Scots are also part of this same diaspora because to me, they seem so similar. They just seem so similar. So much about them, and also they're so talented in business and other areas. So people like Carnegie, the richest man in the world, he just does it naturally. Okay. David says, as opposed to China, where all the water and most of the land is highly contaminated. So Javel says, Fingal and Finn McCool, the classic matchup. Yeah, those ancient Irish tales. One of them actually says their language comes from Asia, and was brought from the Scythia. Nancy Volker, Nintendo Hadrian's Wall. So she's telling Hadrian's Wall was built to keep the Picts from killing the Romans. The Picts survives till later. I think the Romans. Well, you know what happened? I think Hadrian had to take all his soldiers to Israel. He had to build the wall. I reckon he had to withdraw that legion from England, or one of them. So he had to build walls. And everyone says he built walls because the empire was too big, and he didn't want to expand anymore. He thought it was too big. But actually, he had to take troops from every single damn army just to control Israel. Lexor says, my name is Alexander, I'm Irish. Nice. Ireland is a very nice place. Nancy says, Scotland is Irish, the Irish integrated to Scott. Yes. Rodney says, I've read that the Welsh and the... oh, by the way, I found an ancient Egyptian name that sounds like Sean Conn. It sounded like Sean Conn Wazrat. What? So these the Central Asians in ancient Egypt. So Rodney says, I've read that the Welsh and the Basques of Spain are genetically very similar. Could they be part of the same diaspora? Yeah, because apparently Brutus's army went through Troy. I reckon they're from Ukraine. Then through Troy, they settled in Troy and then left. They were pushed out. Then through Italy, they settled in Italy with the Romans. The Romans stayed and the British kept going. They landed in Spain. Sorry, that way around. And then they kept going. And some of the Irish as well from Spain. We know Bartholomew, one of the first Irish. That name is Phoenician. This is a Phoenician settlement in Ireland, a trading post, and they were all wiped out by some kind of plague, apparently. Nintendo says, don't even talk about the Danes. Too embarrassing with the whole Greenland. I know that you Germans, I met some Germans in Dortmund. I have some friends, and I was speaking about that northern province, and they said they're not even Germans, they're Danish. And also the Bavarians, they're not Germans either. They're something else. They drink light beer. They're not Germans. So Nintendo fan says, Nancy Volker, thanks. We'll look it up. McLaren. That was a Formula One team, isn't it? Yeah. So Hitman V says, I like that video you made a while back that had Roman Stadium with trophies in the middle. Oh, that was a long time. Yeah, that video, I don't know if I agree with that anymore, but basically there were pillars there. I said maybe they're the capstones of the pyramid. Who really knows? But who really knows? Maybe they were pillars. Or it depends on the artist's rendition. The fact is it's dismantled. We don't really know, but it looks like they had to have a certain... so this was the Hippodrome. They had to have a certain number of ancient artifacts for some reason in the middle of the Hippodrome to bless it. And actually they copied this design in different hippodromes across the Roman world as well. So the Colosseum went out of fashion. The theatre may have gone out of fashion. It may have just been an Athenian thing just to have a theatre and plays and stuff. And the Hippodrome took over, and it had literal Hippodrome hooligans which nearly destroyed Justinian, and as a result he became a kind of human-hating recluse who wanted to tax everyone into extinction and conquer all the West. And and do whatever. Anyway, guys, we'll be over for 1 hour 40 minutes. Wow. So I will wrap it up, but let's take a few more. Rodney, funny about the Bavarians, they're supposedly closer to Alsatians than Northern Germans. I see a lot of Easterner in the Bavarians, actually. From the conservative political ideologies of that region spawns to the alcohol culture, I see a lot of Eastern. Senior Big Weenie, and also Avars, Avarians, Avars. Hellenes, Allens. And another one I thought of, Aegean Sea, Oko, eye. So the sea, is the sea itself like an eye from above, or are they talking about the sea of the Cyclops with the eye? I don't know. Not sure. How advanced do you think Atlantis really was? Something like a 19th century society, or maybe, who knows? Because if we're talking 10,000 years ago, we're talking the time of Göbekli Tepe. I guess that's radiocarbon dated. I guess we should look at the 10,000 BC. I believe we should apply the 10,000 BC to the pre-dynastic Egyptian. So that's 10,000 BC, which means part of Giza was 10,000 BC. The ramp had artworks on it from pre-dynastic, and maybe also Easter Island. What do you think? What do you think? Why not? Anyway, guys, let's wrap it up. Cheerio, and hopefully we'll do it again soon, eh? Bye, everyone. And this chat will stay up so you can always watch it again. So, cheerio. How do I don't even know how to get out of this. Let me see. What's this gold thing? Oh, you can make a super chat goal. What does that mean? 10 super chats, 5 super chats. Might try that next time. See if I can make a goal on it or something. I'm not sure how that works. All right. I don't even know how to end this. There we go. End stream. Bye, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.